Hi everyone, I'm back to read chapter 3 of our book, MarieGrace and the Orphans, from 1853, book 3 of the MarieGrace Cecile Ray book series on American Girl, and this one is called Philip's Future. A moment later, Mrs. Curtis appeared in the doorway of the examining room. "A gentleman is here to see you, Dr. Gardner," she said with a disapproving air. Dr. Gardner wiped his hands on a towel. "Thank you for your help, Grace. You can go back outside now," he said. Then he turned to the housekeeper. "Please show the patient in." "He's not a patient, sir," said Mrs. Curtis, frowning. "He's come about the baby." MarieGrace froze. "He's here for Philip?" Mrs. Curtis pursed her lips. "That's what he says." "I see," said Dr. Gardner thoughtfully. He straightened his chair. "Well, I'd better go talk to him." MarieGrace followed her father to the door of his office. A burly man stood by Papa's desk. The man took off his hat and introduced himself as Carson Hurst, manager of the Rigby plantation just outside New Orleans. "I saw in the newspaper that you found a baby, and I've come to claim him," said Mr. Hurst with an oily smile. "I have good reason to believe that the child is the rightful property of my employer." "Rightful property?" The words echoed in MarieGrace's head. The man is saying that Philip is a slave, she thought. "That's impossible," MarieGrace exclaimed. Her father looked surprised by her outburst. He glanced at her over his white-rimmed glasses, as if warning her to be quiet. Mr. Hurst smiled at MarieGrace, showing his yellow teeth. "It's not impossible at all, young lady," he said. "A slave ran away a few weeks ago. She had just given birth, and she took the baby with her. But it's likely she had to give up the boy to avoid detection." "Why do you assume that this is your slave's baby?" Dr. Gardner asked, stepping behind his desk. I don't even know that he's a child of color." "I've been talking to people whereabouts, and they say the baby you found is about a month old and light-skinned with dark hair," said Mr. Hurst. "Well, that's the right age for the child, and the mother is really light-skinned too. So it's more than likely her child. All I want is to see that the baby is returned to his rightful owner." MarieGrace wanted to run to the courtyard and hide Philip so that Mr. Hurst could never find him. But her feet seemed fixed to the ground. She watched her father casually start to shuffle through the papers. "Have you found the mother?" Dr. Gardner inquired. He sounded mildly curious. Mr. Hurst admitted that he hadn't. "But we won't stop looking for either of them till we do," he promised. They can't have gone too far." "Well, you can have the child if you want him," Dr. Gardner said. "I've been hoping someone would turn up to pay his medical bill." MarieGrace watched in horror as her father pulled out a piece of paper and began to write a list of numbers. "Papa wouldn't really give Philip away, would he?" She wondered as her stomach tightened with fear. Mr. Hurst raised his eyebrows. "Medical bill? Why, if you've been asking around, you surely know that the child has been quite sickly," said Dr. Gardner, writing quickly. "I've done my best to get him stronger. I even hired a nurse for him. But he's weaker than a runt puppy, and I can't guarantee he'll survive much longer. Still, I deserve to be paid for all my work. Don't you agree?" He put down his pen and handed Mr. Hurst the bill. Mr. Hurst looked at the paper and his face turned red. "You want this much money for taking care of a slave baby?" he demanded. Dr. Gardner's eyes were suddenly steely. "I've detailed every expense, and I won't settle for a penny less. If you want to take the baby, you'll have to pay my bill first." Mr. Hurst threw the paper on the desk. "That's highway robbery, and I only have your word that the baby is sick at all." Mr. Hurst jammed his hat back on his head. "I'm going to keep looking till I find that baby. And his mother, too. Good day to you, sir," he said. Then he stalked out of the office, slamming the door behind him. As soon as Mr. Hurst was gone, MarieGrace rushed over to her father. "You don't think Philip is going to die, do you, Papa?" she asked, gripping the desk tightly. Of course not, said her father. He tossed the bill into the desk drawer and smiled at MarieGrace. Philip has gained weight nicely, and his cheeks are almost chubby now. I think he'll be fine. Would you really have given Philip to that awful man, she asked, searching her father's eyes, even if he'd had the money to pay your bill? He gave her shoulders a reassuring squeeze. No, indeed, Grace, he said, but money is the one thing that people like Mr. Hurst understand. That's why I asked for so much. I knew Mr. Hurst would never pay it. MarieGrace relaxed her hold on the desk. Do you think Mr. Hurst will come back, she asked. He might, her father replied, frowning. Mr. Hurst seemed to have made up his mind that Philip belongs to the Rigby plantation, and he may go to great lengths to claim him. Papa closed the desk drawer firmly. I think it's time that we take Philip to Holy Trinity, he continued. Mr. Hurst won't look there, since in an orphanage with for white children. As long as there's no problem with Father Sebastian, Philip will be safe. Why would there be a problem? Asked MarieGrace, frowning. The priest decides whether a child should be admitted to the orphanage, Papa said. If Father Sebastian thinks that Philip might be a child of color, he could not allow him into Holy Trinity. Then what would happen to Philip? Well, we would have to take him to another orphanage, perhaps one for children of color, Papa said. But Mr. Hurst might look for him there, MarieGrace protested. Don't worry about that now, said her father as he straightened his papers. I'll tell the nuns at Holy Trinity that we'll bring Philip next week, and we'll see what happens then. A chill ran up MarieGrace's spine. What will we do if Father Sebastian turns Philip away, she worried. In the meantime, her father continued, I need some things from Monsieur Dupont's pharmacy. Would you like to come with me? The pharmacy was in a small building tucked around the corner from Jackson Square. The shop was filled with colored bottles of medicine, all labeled with strange-sounding names. MarieGrace usually liked to look around the pharmacy while her father talked with Monsieur Dupont. But today she was too worried to stay inside. Instead, she took Argos for a walk through the gardens in Jackson Square. The square was busy with strolling couples admiring the flowers and street vendors selling their wares. Yet MarieGrace hardly noticed the people around her. All she could think about was the baby, Philip, and the terrible possibility that Mr. Hurst might claim him as a slave. When she and Argos reached the far end of the square, MarieGrace stopped to admire the magnificent St. Louis Cathedral. Looking up at the cross on top of the tallest center spire, MarieGrace made a silent promise that she would do everything she could do to help Philip. But what, she wondered. She was about to return to the pharmacy when she saw a girl step outside through the cathedral's wide doors. With a jolt of surprise, MarieGrace realized that it was Cecile. Her friend always looked elegant, but today she was wearing an especially beautiful dress, and she was talking to a handsome young man with a mustache. Could that be her brother, Armand? MarieGrace wondered. Cecile had often talked about her brother, but MarieGrace didn't know what Armand looked like. She had never met any of Cecile's family. The Rays socialized mostly with other wealthy, free people of color. MarieGrace's father worked so much that he and MarieGrace hardly socialized at all. A few months ago, however, MarieGrace and Cecile had both gone to the Mardi Gras balls on the same evening. Their parties had been in separate ballrooms just down the hall from each other, but Cecile had thought up a clever plan for the two girls to slip into each other's balls. She had dressed in the same costume that was identical to MarieGrace's. The girls had traded places and danced at each other's balls, and no one had discovered the switch. Suddenly, MarieGrace caught her breath. Thinking about the costumes had given her an idea that might save Philip. If only I can get Cecile to help me, she thought. But Cecile was busy talking with the young man, and MarieGrace felt too shy to march over and interrupt their conversation. She stood watching her friend, uncertain what to do. Argos started toward the cathedral, tugging at his leash. He looked back at MarieGrace expectantly. "You're right," MarieGrace whispered to the dog. "I have to try to tell her." MarieGrace reached into her pocket. She had a stub of a pencil and an old shopping list. She tore off a corner of the paper and quickly scribbled a note to Cecile. "Can you meet me before lessons? It's important." Then she looked up. When she looked up, the young man was gone. "This is my chance," thought MarieGrace. "Cecile," she called as she and Argos ran up to the cathedral together. "I'm so glad I saw you. I need your help." Cecile looked concerned. "What's wrong?" she asked. MarieGrace was breathless. "I found," she began, but before she could say anything more, the young man with the mustache came out of the cathedral with several other people. They were all speaking French and laughing together. "My brother has just returned from France," said Cecile, smiling. "Come, I'll introduce you to my family." MarieGrace blushed. "Oh, no, I don't want to interrupt," she stammered. "I just wanted to give you this." And she thrust the folded note toward Cecile. But Cecile could say, before Cecile could say anything, MarieGrace and Argos ran back through the square. And when she reached the edge of the gardens, MarieGrace turned back to the cathedral. Her eyes met Cecile's, and Cecile nodded ever so slightly. MarieGrace's heart was pounding as she and Argos returned to Monsieur Dupont's pharmacy. "I hope Cecile can help me," she thought. "Maybe together we can keep Philip safe from Mr. Hurst." Okay, and that is the end of chapter 3. Next time we'll read chapter 4 of MarieGrace and the Orphans, book 3 from 1853.